second edition. And yesterday I said a couple things. I said, I was thinking about it last night. I said that the italicized words were more expensive. And I did some research on that. It's not necessarily true that like the cost to print the book was more because they chose to italicize certain portions, right? Like where it says, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is italicized. It didn't cost more money necessarily, so but it was not just a simple. It's like the point is pay attention to why it's italicized for a reason. I think today we italicize it's so easy. We just, and it's when I'm pissed off in an email, I italicize a bunch of stuff, right? Um, and it's easy to do. But in 1939, when they were printing this book for the first time, it was like you had to take the plate off and put in the italicized words for that sentence and then stop the press and then take them off. So it was definitely, it's just something to notice, right? It's just to kind of bring to the forefront of your mind, why are those words italicized? It wasn't as simple as click like it is today. So it was done intentionally. It was done for a very specific reason. And just pay attention to that. Precisely how we have recovered is italicized, right? And that's what this book is about. Precisely how we have recovered. Not generally, sort of, kind of, maybe what we did, precisely what we did and what we're doing. In large part, what millions of people are still doing to this day, to have the obsession for alcohol removed and drugs and whatever else, honestly. The 12 steps applies to so many things. It could apply to anything, truly. For the purpose of this book, we're going to just, it's alcoholism, but anybody listening to this could just take alcohol or alcoholism and take it out mentally in your mind. Just take that word out and put in whatever it is: compulsive shopping, compulsive eating, compulsive gambling, codependency, over exercising. I mean, I mow my lawn too much. Whatever your thing is that's seemingly making your life unmanageable, you could replace whatever that is, put it in replace of alcoholism or alcohol, and use the 12 steps to bring about a psychic change. Okay, so foreword to the second edition. Figures given in this foreword describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. So remember, that's 16 years of shit happening. 16 years of AA, came upon the world and the fellowship grew. If you remember, from 1939, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition in 1955 reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. All right. So it's like almost 5x, I guess, if we do that. I'm not a mathematician, but so from 300,000 copies, first edition, 1939, to 1,150,500 copies in circulation in 1955. 16 years of shit happening. Since the original foreword to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. Our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already, continues the early text, twos and threes and fives of us have sprung up in other communities. So in 1939, they're saying, Um, as our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Okay. Which, if you think about that, that's very true. Okay. You could go to almost, I think, pretty much any country on the planet and find an AA meeting. Um, cruise ships, hotels. You stay at a hotel and you could go to the concierge sometimes. The airport, I've heard this, right? You go to the airport and you say, I'm a friend of Bill W. I'm looking for a friend of Bill W. And they'll get on the intercom and say, friend of Bill W is at terminal XYZ. We should try it, right? Maybe someday, if people ever watch this, I'll do that live in the airport. I will do it too, now that I just said it. Um, but what they're saying is, we hope that for every alcoholic who journeys, they will find Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship at their destination. So that could mean two things. That could mean, like, we hope that what we're creating in the world, every alcoholic who goes out into the world searching for a solution will find us there, wherever that is. It could be very kind of like, you know, metaphorical in a sense, but then it could also mean we hope that every alcoholic who goes on a road trip with his family to, South Florida, find a million meetings there, or anybody that is on a business trip to Timbuktu, USA, that they could easily find a meeting there. So that's what they're saying in 1939. And then they're in the early text continues, twos and threes and fives of us have sprung up in other communities. So Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob kicked this thing off, and then about 100 people are like the first people who were working the steps and having the obsession and compulsion to drink relieved from them. So that's what they're saying. We are more than 100 men and women. And in this foreword to the second edition, at the time, so in the 30s, early 40s, I guess, right? Twos and threes and fives of us were springing up in other communities. So if we're in, you know, Johntown, and then you hear that in Bobtown, 3 hours away, you get a letter that two, three guys are meeting and they're talking about this program, reading this book. That's how it started. Nowadays, you could go anywhere in the world pretty much and find an AA meeting, and it's not how it's always been. So the point is just to have some gratitude for that. It wasn't always as accessible as it is now. Okay, well, let's chill. All right. 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. Groups are to be found in each of the United States and all of the provinces of Canada. AA has flourishing communities in the British Isles, the Scandinavian countries, South Africa, South America, Mexico, Alaska, Australia, and Hawaii. All told, promising beginnings have been made in some 50 foreign countries and US possessions. Some are just now taking shape in Asia. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning, only the augury of a much larger future ahead. So that's in 1955. AA had already reached all those places. The spark that was to flare into the first AA group was struck in Akron, Ohio in June of 1935 during a talk between a New York stockbroker, Bill Wilson, and an Akron physician, Dr. Bob. 6 months, it doesn't say that, I'm just kind of, right? 6 months earlier, so during a talk between a New York stockbroker, Bill Wilson, and an Akron physician, Dr. Bob. 6 months earlier, the broker, Bill Wilson, had been relieved of his drink obsession. 6 months earlier, the broker, Bill Wilson, had been relieved of his drink obsession by a sudden spiritual experience. Following a meeting with an alcoholic friend, Eddie Thatcher, who had been in contact with the Oxford groups of that day. So the Oxford groups are like a predecessor to AA, slightly same overall concept, but different. Um, he had also been greatly helped by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, a New York specialist in alcoholism, who is now accounted no less than a medical saint by AA members, and whose story of the early days of our society appears in the next pages. Okay, give me a second. All right. So Bill met with Bob in Akron, Ohio. Bill was on a business trip, and the deal fell through, and he was in a hotel, and he was getting ready to drink. We'll talk about that. They talk about that later too. And he got on the phone, like church directory, talked to a priest or something, and was kind of suggested to go meet Dr. Bob, who was just a drunk in Akron, Ohio. So, I mean, imagine if you're sitting there today and some dude just knocks on your door. It's not, you know what I mean? You're probably like, get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? So it was tense. It was weird, it was totally awkward, what had to be done. But Bill did it. He and Bill were the first two. And Bill's saying that um, he was also greatly helped by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, a New York specialist in alcoholism, who is now accounted no less than a medical saint by AA members, and whose story of the early days of our society appears in the next pages. That's the doctor's opinion. Okay, so the doctor's opinion is Dr. William D. Silkworth. Okay, so from this doctor, Dr. Silkworth, the broker, Bill, had learned the grave nature of alcoholism. Though he could not accept all the tenets of the Oxford group, he was convinced of the need for moral inventory, confession of personality defects, restitution to those harmed, helpfulness to others, and the necessity of belief in and dependence upon God. That's what it says, right? And if you have like an issue with God, you just table it that for right now and you keep reading. So the Oxford groups, he was convinced of the need for moral inventory, which became our step 4, confession of personality defects, 5, 6, 7, kind of, restitution to those harmed, 8, 9, helpfulness to others, 12, and the necessity of belief in and dependence upon God. So like 3, 11, right? Step 3, step 11. Prior to his journey to Akron, the broker had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic could help an alcoholic. But he had succeeded only in keeping himself sober. So again, this is Bill Wilson. The broker had gone to Akron on a business venture which had collapsed, leaving him greatly in fear that he might start drinking again. He suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. That alcoholic turned out to be the Akron physician, Dr. Bob. This physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma, but had failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue the spiritual remedy for his malady with a willingness he had never before been able to muster. He sobered, Dr. Bob, never to drink again up to the moment of his death in 1950. This seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another alcoholic as no non alcoholic could. So, um, Bill was in Akron. Deal fell through. He was in fear of drinking. He realized I've been carrying this message to alcoholics, trying to show people what I've figured out for 6 months, it says. And the only result was that he himself stayed sober. The other guys he was working with kept drinking or whatever they did, right? So then he's in Akron. Gets in contact with Bob. He goes to Bob. He tells Bob the doctor's opinion. And basically, like the rudimentary idea of the steps that were formulated at that time. Bob did that. And Dr. Bob got sober and never drank again until he died in 1950. And this seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another alcoholic as no non alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital. I got to pronunciate it correctly. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. So that's, if you know anything, but spoiler alert, that's the 12th step. And you got to work all steps to get to 12 to be qualified or capable or whatever word you want to use for to carry the message that and become a sponsor to somebody, help somebody else through the steps. And they're saying that what they discovered was that is vital to permanent recovery. So if we were talking about cancer, we would say permanent remission. Same idea, same concept. Like it could come back, but it's in remission. It's no longer harming the system. So when somebody says, I've recovered from alcoholism, um, it means that the condition is in remission. It never is cured, as far as we know. Like let's take another chronic, like diabetes. If I'm diabetic, I could do certain things and get my blood sugar in such a place, and through my diet and exercise. In some situation, not all diabetic situations are like this, but as an example, and I could maintain that routine, I could maintain that program and keep my blood sugar in a healthy where it needs to be, and then I would no longer suffer from the symptoms or the problems caused by diabetes. But if I go nuts and I eat a bunch of sugar and stop exercising, my diabetic situation would come out of remission and I would begin to experience the harmful consequences of diabetes. Okay, so that's an example. So if we replace diabetes with alcoholism, if I maintain a certain program, the condition of alcoholism, whether you want to call it a disease or whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. It's a condition that we have. And if we do certain things, we can basically put it in remission permanently. One of those things is vital to work with another alcoholic, to be of service to another alcoholic, to carry this message. And we're just in like the very beginning stages of it, of talking about what the whole thing is. But it's like, okay, so nothing to do right now if you're new. All right. If you've never worked steps or whatever the case may be, you table that. You go, okay, noted for someday, somewhere down the road, but I don't have to worry about that right now. Okay. where you are right now is on page XVII, right? And then, hence, the two men set to work almost frantically upon alcoholics arriving in the ward of the Akron City Hospital. So Bill is from New York, was in Akron on a business trip, met Bob, carried the message to Bob. Bob got it, right? Dr. Bob. And then they commenced, hence the two men set to work almost frantically upon alcoholics arriving in the ward of the Akron City Hospital. Akron City Hospital. Bill's from New York. So I guess Bill stayed in Ohio for a while. Now, think about like, what am I willing? What in my life is so important? And what am I so passionate about today that I would travel from Florida to, let's say, South Carolina on a trip and then call my wife and say, "Hey, I'm staying in South Carolina for however long because I got to help these guys or I got to help these people," right? That's what he was doing. It wasn't an easy thing to do. Or maybe it was, but right. It's still like those are the details. He was from New York, going to Ohio, back and forth, or staying in Ohio, working with Bob to just go try to bring this new message they had together to strangers, to drunk, angry strangers in a hospital. Okay, so in the very first case, okay, so they're at the Akron City Hospital. Their very first case, a desperate one, recovered immediately and became AA number 3. He never had another drink. And I actually don't know that person's name off the top of my head. Um, I've known it at times and then it eludes me. So, but that's AA number 3. Um, who so now it's Bill and Bob. So Bill did this for 6 months by himself. Nobody got sober except he stayed sober. He brings it to Bob. Bob's the first like eureka breakthrough. Bob gets sober, stays sober. Two of them are sober. They go to Akron Hospital. They meet number 3. Number 3 says, "I'm in." Stays, gets sober, never has a drink again. So now they got 3. This work at Akron continued through the summer of 1935. There were many failures, but there was an occasional heartening success. When the broker returned to New York in the fall of 1935, so that's a few months that he stayed, the first AA group had actually been formed, though no one realized it at the time. A second small group promptly took shape at New York, to be followed in 1937 with the start of a third at Cleveland. So you have Akron, New York, Cleveland, AA groups. Besides these, there were scattered alcoholics who had picked up the basic ideas in Akron or New York, who were trying to form groups in other cities. By late 1937, the number of members having substantial sobriety time behind them was sufficient to convince the membership that a new light had entered the dark world of the alcoholic. So that's by 1937, 2 years before the first edition of this book was printed. It was now time. It was now time. The struggling groups thought, oh, so here we go. It was now time, the struggling groups thought, to place their message and unique experience before the world. This determination bore fruit in the spring of 1939 by the publication of this volume. The membership had then reached about 100 men and women. The fledgling society, which had been nameless, now began to be called Alcoholics Anonymous from the title of its own book. The flying blind period ended, and AA entered a new phase of its pioneering time. With the appearance of the new book, a great deal began to happen. Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, the noted clergyman, reviewed it, the book, with approval. In the fall of 1939, Fulton Ausler, the editor of Liberty, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics Anonymous or Alcoholics and God. Okay, so let me do that again, right? With the appearance of this new book, a great deal began to happen. Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, the noted clergyman, reviewed it with approval. In the fall of 1939, Fulton Ausler, then editor of Liberty, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics and God. This brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. So they had a little office in New York. 800 inquiries came in after an article was printed in the Liberty magazine entitled Alcoholics and God. 800 frantic inquiries. Each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Pamphlets and books were sent out. Businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. By the end of 1939, it was estimated that 800 alcoholics were on their road to recovery, on their way to recovery. So then I'm in my little group in Akron, and I'm a door to door vacuum salesman. And I'm going down to Georgia on a business trip. And then they go, "Where are you going again next week?" "I'm going to Alpharetta, Georgia." And they go, "Oh, hold on one second. Oh, we got an inquiry from a guy down there. His name's Larry Smith. He's in, roundabout Alpharetta. He inquired, will you meet with him?" And then I'm on my business trip. I go do my business. And then I, take a whatever, a taxi cab or a train or something, to meet with Larry Smith, who rode into the office in New York after reading the article Alcoholics and God in the Liberty magazine. Lots of effort at this time, right? And nowadays we're like, oh, I don't feel like logging into my Zoom meeting. That's all right. That is okay to feel that way. And then you realize, like, holy shit, the Zoom meeting and all these things, all this stuff exists because a few of these 100 people were willing, you know, to do really awkward, uncomfortable things to carry this message. So maybe then that like strikes your heart a little bit. You go, damn, I'm a part of something that has a really interesting history. Or you don't give a shit. And that's okay too. All right. In the spring of 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. So that's like today, Elon Musk having a dinner and inviting this new group, this new, I can't even think of something, right? Like I'm addicted to Instagram group or something, right? To this meeting to talk about how they've recovered from this thing, right? I don't know. That was probably shitty. Whatever. John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends, to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. News of this got on the world wires. Inquiries poured in again, and many people went to the bookstores to get the book Alcoholics Anonymous. By March 19, that's the dude I was talking about, the Iowa farmer yesterday. Went to the bookstore. By March 1941, the membership had shot up to 2,000. Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that alcoholics in need of help really deluged us. So deluge, like a huge wave, a tsunami wave, of inquiries came in. By the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. So what are they saying? By March 41, the membership had shot up to 2,000 from about 800, remember? Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that alcoholics in need of help really deluged us. By the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. The mushrooming process was in full swing. AA had become a national institution. So, what is that? 2 years, 39, 40, 41, right? In 2 years, from 100, roughly 100 people to 8,000. So, what's that? 800x, like to get that return on my crypto. Just kidding. All right. Anyway, 800x, something like that. Our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. The test that it faced was this. So here's the test as it's growing. Could these large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms which would split AA apart? Soon, AA was beset by these very problems on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to hang together or die separately. We had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene. So it grew to 8,000 people by the end of 41. And then, you got all these newly sober people. The most time anybody could be sober at this point is like Dr. Bob and Bill, I guess, with like 6 years, 35 to 41. So, like, the old timer had 6 years. And imagine your group or your home group and people with 6 months or a year or 2 years, like we can be pretty erratic, as it says here. So they come to this realization like we have to unify or this is going to break apart. As we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, so we had to evolve the principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society. So here's some of the principles, right? Okay, so it said we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, which you find in the 12 steps. So we had to evolve principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. So not just survive, but function effectively to continue carrying the message. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society. Okay. Principle one, that our leaders might serve but never govern. Principle two, that each group was to be autonomous and there was to be no professional class of therapy. It's listing them right now. There were to be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. There was to be the least possible organization, even in our service centers. Our public relations were to be based upon attraction rather than promotion. So no advertising, word of mouth, like put it out there. And if it comes back, great, you know. Um, it was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. right? So it's like highlight that right there, those principles there on XIX in the fourth edition, and then just apply that to the world. Like, what if every group followed those principles? What a world we would have. So this was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book. All right. So then you might get a little curious here. And you go and you flip forward. Oh my lord. Here we go. Yeah, 561. Right. And then all the way in the back of the book. So that's there. Okay, great. We're not doing traditions right now necessarily. We're just getting into this, right? So this was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book. Though none of these principles had the force of rules or laws, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held at Cleveland. Today, the remarkable is the right word. Today, the remarkable unity of AA is one of the greatest assets that our society has. While the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons. Okay, so the zeitgeist, right? Like the public acceptance is what he's saying of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons: the large numbers of recoveries and reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere. Okay, so because it works. Even in the earliest days, it works. Exactly as it's laid out in this book, it was working. So large numbers of people were recovering. You know, they weren't drinking, they were improving as a human being. They were reuniting families, mending relationships. And there's the proof is in the pudding, right? So they're saying, like, damn, this shit works. So public acceptance, doctors, clergymen, scientists, psychologists, all, you know, people who could poo poo it and say, like, oh, what is this? Just another pseudoscience is the word people like to use nowadays, but they couldn't. They were going, well, whatever this thing is, it's working. Okay, so those were the two main reasons: is individual recoveries and reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. Okay, so what they're saying is for those that came to AA and were all in, no bullshit, half got sober and stayed sober forever. Well, until they pass away, right? So we call that a one white chip wonder today. Okay. Of alcoholics who came and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 50%. 25% sobered up after some relapses. And among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program. But great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So half the people came, bought it right away, got sober, stayed sober. 25% got sober after a few relapses. You know, they tried some controlled drinking and failed and came back to AA. So that's 75%. And then of the remainder, they're saying those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. So maybe I was like a a gutter bum dying drunk. And maybe I didn't come to A and, I'm all in, buy it, but I kept coming over the years and my life got better, you know? it got better. Maybe I kept drinking here and there, or I don't know. It's like the variables are too great in that situation as to like what's going on. But if you were to zoom out and just look at this guy from 5 years ago to now, it's like he's doing better. You know, he's not picking up years, and all that type of stuff. But his life has gotten better. We raised the bottom, as they like to say now. So, and then it's saying other thousands came to a few meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program. They're like, yo, this is too much. This is crazy, dude. You guys are a fucking cult, right? But great numbers of those people, about 2 out of 3, it's good, began to return as time passed. So, right? Because we all know those people. Oh, this fucking cult, it's like, whatever, do your thing, man. You know, if and when you find that the other ways you're trying to do this thing don't really work out great for you, we'll be right here. And we love you. That's why they say keep coming back. It's like, we'll be here. Go do your thing. Keep coming back. Because thousands of people who just kept coming back improved. Another reason for the wide acceptance of AA was the ministration of friends in medicine, religion, and the press, together with innumerable others who became our able and persistent advocates. Without such support, AA could have made only the slowest progress. Some of the recommendations of AA's early medical and religious friends will be found further on in this book. So they're saying, like, doctors, clergymen, press saw it was working and then, supported it publicly. They put their name on it and said, this is a good way to go. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. Neither does AA take any particular medical point of view, though we cooperate widely with the men of medicine as well as with the men of religion, men and women, whatever, right? Alcohol being no respecter of persons, we are an accurate cross section of America, and in distant lands, the same demographic evening up process is now going on. By personal religious affiliation, we include Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Hindus, and a sprinkling of Muslims and Buddhists. More than 15% of us are women. Okay, so that's in 1955. At present, our membership is pyramiding at the rate of about 20% a year. So far, upon the total problem of several million actual and potential alcoholics in the world, we have made only a scratch. In all probability, we shall never be able to touch more than a fair fraction of the alcohol problem in all its ramifications. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. Okay, so that's the other piece to this, right? So, a wide variety of people are in AA. The demographic is large. Okay, men, women, all different religions, sprinkling all over the world. And then they're saying of the total problem of several million actual and potential alcoholics in the world, we have made only a scratch. In all probability, we shall never be able to touch more than a fair fraction of the alcohol problem in all its ramifications. So they're not saying we're going to heal the world of alcoholism. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. So they're saying themselves, we're not the only way. If you have a drinking problem or a drug problem or whatever kind of problem, specifically alcohol in this case, we're not the end all be all. You know, you do not have to come here. You can try it. You're welcome. You can relapse and come back. You could come and stay forever. You could be in and out and in and out and in and out and in for the next 30 years. We just hope that your life gets a little bit better in the process. So, upon therapy, no monopoly yet. Yet, it is our great hope that all those who have as yet found no answer may begin to find one in the pages of this book and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. 1955. That's pretty sick. So then the next is forward to the third edition, and we'll see what's going on by 1976, which is 21 years later, 55, 65, 75, 76, 21 years later. So, you know, that's forward to the second edition. Pretty interesting to me. I think it's interesting and how it grew. Authenticity wins. Remember that. Being authentic. And the big thing about AA that I think people discover maybe right away or maybe over time is it's an ego deflating process. That's the nature of the 12 steps. Take the human ego and right size that motherfucker, right size the ego. We need the ego. The ego's fine. It's not bad. It's just that through drinking and all the things, the ego gets like a mutant. Okay, so we right size the ego. We develop some principles that we live by, which involves a lot of self reflection, admitting when we're wrong, ego deflation, um, making restitution to those we've harmed, ego deflation, continuing to watch where we may engage in behavior that's not advantageous to us and others, ego deflation, continue our conscious contact with a higher power, whatever that is to each individual. And then we go and we're of service to other people, specifically alcoholics, but anyone. We go and we work to be of service. And I think that's why like there's nothing wrong with that. There's no part of that that's like, well, that's a little too much. I mean, some people say that, but it's not too much. It's like basic human, right? I think this process is like it happened to be discovered by alcoholics and to be offered to alcoholics at first, but I think it's a process by which anybody can live. And no matter what your difficulties are, it can help to improve your life and improve how you see the world, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the fact that you're even alive. You know, we didn't choose to be born. We're here though, and what are we going to do with it? So that's what, all I had to do was like drink my face off and I just was handed this on a silver platter. So I take it seriously. I go, all right, and there were years that I haven't been extremely involved in meetings or the fellowship, but at no point in that process was I ever thinking I didn't need AA. Um, it's just, you can catch yourself on a routine that can stretch longer than you like it. And you go, damn, I really need to reconnect. And so you keep coming back, stay connected, and we'll do forward to the third edition whenever we do that, maybe tomorrow.